Hello to everybody and welcome to this second clinical webinar on NIRVANA system. Today I'm with Dr. Silvia Galbardi, and she's the director of NEUROCOGNITIVE laboratory, Medica Viva in Padua. And today she will explain how she used the NIRVANA system in her laboratory, in particular in the treatment of infant disabilities. So thank you very much for your time, and we can start the webinar.
Hello to everybody. Dear colleagues, thank you for your time, and I hope you forgive me for my poor English and my mistakes. I'm the director of a laboratory in Padua, a neurocognitive laboratory where we treat children with disability. We have a particular vision of disability because for us, children with disabilities have many capabilities and potentialities that we think it's very important to get out. And if they are corrected, stimulated, and integrated in their community, that could be the school, the family, to themselves and to the other people. They represent a great research that must be enhanced. Of course, they present something different, but we think that this difference is a synonym of unicity, and that we must work with them like midwives, try to keep all their research, and because they have an internal world very rich of emotion and with special sensation that we can use just to realize their potentiality. Of course, the mental disability is a disturb of developing and includes difficulties in adaptive sense in the social life, in the practical capabilities, and in learning. We think that we can approach these patients in two different perspectives. From the cognitive and affective problems of development, and from the problems of movement development. They have an incomplete and late acquiring, and so they have an atypical use of psychomotor functions. But the development profile of these children indicates the presence of a fracture of a hole between the cognitive duties and their other abilities, linguistic, motoric, and so on. Our objective, the objective of neurorehabilitation, is a complete interest to the adaptive functions, that is to the systems that allows the adjustment of the child to the context and to the request that the background where they live propose. It means that we have a global vision of our patients. Close to the deficiency, it's important to evaluate the available results, either in the person, either in the environment where they live. and the level of use, because the rehabilitation project is based on the enhancement of the results more than on the delay of legs. We cannot delay, of course, of legs, especially where the pathology is a genetic pathology like in Down syndrome or in Asperger syndrome, or in other pathologies of the delivery, for example, the PCI or the other damage coming from hypoxia. So we cannot think, of course, to delay these legs, but we can think that the therapy, if it's not able to cancel the symptoms, could try to realize the person with his abilities, with his resources in his environment. This vision needs a global look of the child and in his interaction with the environment, and it's necessary to treat the motor pathology as a direct and indirect effect of a cognitive problems of organization. We have 3 points very important where we start and then measure, shape, and subjects. Of course, they are different depending on the pathology of our patient. I mean, we can measure the movement of a child, but if the child is a spastic child, we can say that he doesn't move a lot. But if the child is dyskinetic patient, instead we could say that he moves too much. So also measure is a parameter that depends on the pathology we start from. The same is for the pattern. A spastic child must increase his range of movements, acquiring new motor modules, but this genetic child instead must learn the rules of movement just to give more efficacy to his action. The same for the subject. The subject is a relationship between an aim, a chosen aim, and the motoric tools we use to achieve. And of course, it could be different depending on the aim we want to achieve and depending on the capability of the subject, of the patient to create this relationship. The deficiency of movement is not only a problem of motoric behavior, but it includes cognitive, emotional, and relational space. It's not an incapability, but to move, but it's an incapability to operate. Another parameter that we have to consider is the time. In fact, in this interpretation, we lost the temporal aspect, but disability is not only capability to operate, but above all, immobility in the time. Deep laid as promise of an unreachable future. The dimension of the improvement, the real extent of growing in time. We can say that if we stop time, all aims could be achieved. So the lack of change measures the gravity of pathology, but the delay in timing is a development of incompetence of functions. Movement is not only an act. Movement is the result of a project. So we have behind a mental project of the movement that we want to do. We project the motoric act, referring the characteristic of assignment to carry out and the aim to achieve, thanks to the sensitive, sensorial, perceptive information that it's necessary to have. To execute a correct movement, we must have a total integrity of the perception necessary to drive the execution of that movement. For example, if we have a neglect or an inattention, it could be the result of the incapability to use a limb for the deficit of a perceptive relationship. We have different labels, and we have to test what level is compromised. We have sensations, so we could have difficulties in collecting digital signals and in transmitting these signals from the periphery to the central nervous system. But we could have this information, but it could be a problem to join this information, to recognize this information, or to compare this information. Or we could have a problem of representation. So it means that the information arrives from the periphery to the central brain, and that we are able to collect them, to join, to recognize, to structure, but it's possible that we have not the capability to elaborate this information. So, perception and movement are aspects of the same process, and they meet together, they join together, they are integrated in the motoric control. Of course, our basis are scientific, not the results of our fantasy, but we referring to important scientific study, starting from the plasticity. Now we know that plasticity exists. Plasticity is the rule of renewal of our body, and we know that all the tissue this capability, bones, skins, muscles. Skin is under our eyes. We know that after 3-4 weeks, skin is able to renew its cells. But until a few years ago, we thought that this plastic process were not possible for the nervous system, and so that recovery in this area were impossible. Now we know that plasticity is a characteristic also of the system, the nervous system, and this particular characteristic feature is called sprouting. Sprouting is the correct word because it explains very well what happens. If we interrupt the neuron next to the junction with the muscles, we know that it is capable to generate a new termination, or that all the other neurons around can support it, creating a new collateral branches connecting all together. It's the same lesion or the degeneration to create this good background to stimulate the sprouting. And the next studies try to demonstrate that not only connection could be created, but also a neurogenesis. It means that the creation of new neurons is possible. At the beginning of this study, we think that the neuronal plasticity was located only in the brain close to the lesion. But the next study demonstrates that the plasticity activity is also far from the lesion too. In our brain, there are several areas that represent and manage information. For example, visual information are elaborated in occipital lobes. The information that comes from the body, some aesthetic information, are elaborated in the parietal lobes. These cerebral areas are plastic too, and they have modified information based on the experience. We know, because it's well known that a person loses eyesight, the other senses are amplified. But this amplification is a biological response, is a biological base, because the brain organizes its structure in a different way, offering new space, offering junctions where the abilities useful for life are necessary, and where, in case of blindness, we lost this information. So the information are acoustic and tactile and some aesthetic, and they cover the space left free from the eyesight. There's a famous study that demonstrated that the lesion on the peripheral nerve of superior limb of monkey creates a new organization of the brain areas, exactly the areas designated to analyze the information coming from the areas of the body innervated, but the nerve, the damaged nerve. So, without the information from the compromised areas, there are other areas that respond just to give the information that we lost. A patient with an amputation, for example, an amputated hand, continues to feel the lost hand and the sensation coming from the lost hand if you touch him on the face. It seems to be very strange, but it's easy to explain. Some areas of the brain corresponding to the function of the hand, and this area are so close to the areas referring to the sensation of the face. This is the reason, because if you touch the face, these areas expand in the space like a veil, and covering the lack of information coming from the loss of the hand. There's another important aspect of the mind, that's the image movement. We have an image of our movement into the brain that expand the areas of activity of the brain same. For example, the execution of a simple refrain on the piano, shown in the brain an expansion of that areas where the movement of the fingers playing on the piano are represented. It means that during the exercise, the brain changed thanks to the information coming from the experience, coming from the exercise. But this is a neurocognitive modification, and it's the base of our theory. But the most interesting thing is that if the person who normally play on the piano the refrain, only think the refrain, only think the music on his mind, only think the movement of the fingers on the piano just to reproduce the refrain. In that area of the brain, we have an increase of 30% also when the refrain is imaged. This is the imaged movement, a great tool to recover the lost abilities in rehabilitation, but not only to recover the lost abilities, but also to build up, like children, to build up abilities that they do not have. Another important neurological aspect is the strong relationship between motoric development and neuropsychological development. confirmed by the discovery of a family of neurons called mirror neurons, strictly involved in both development processes. The discovery of mirror neurons is recent, but everybody could see this thing if if you have a cat, for example. Cat is a pet with great areas, parietal areas with mirror neurons, also monkeys, not only cats. And if you have a cat in your house, you can see that it's observed very strictly your movement, and he's capable to reproduce, for example, to open a door. These capabilities come from the mirror neurons, cells that are activated when you observe an action, you observe somebody making action, and you elaborate this action in your mind exactly to reproduce with the movement. The role of these neurons is to represent the observed actions for the comprehension of the same. I mean, represent inside to an internal representation and to learn and test then the acquired information. The person recognizes the actions performed by other persons and activates a group of neurons dedicated to internalize and to reproduce the same action. In fact, the mirror neurons are strictly jointed to the imagined motion because they allow the internal representation of the imagined stimulation of a real action. That could be motoric, but it could be social, it could be linguistic action. Some studies suppose that the motoric coordination disease could come from a damage of the mirror neuron system. If a patient cannot represent a movement into his mind, he will assume a different perspective of himself. And this patient miss the relationship between the movement and the imagined ones. This difficulty to represent himself in a motoric partner is a typical characteristic of all that patient with motoric coordination disease. And many children in our laboratory present difficulties in execution of partner, where the activation of this mental process are requests. The neurocognitive theory starts from the base that rehabilitation is a particular form of learning in pathologic situation. So the quality of the recovery, spontaneous recovery or driven by the therapist, depends on the terms of activation of cognitive process. So the neurocognitive theory demonstrates the extreme importance of the cognitive processes regarding movement and also behavior. So all the exercises are studied to stimulate and develop movement together with the cognitive processes necessary to arrive to that movement. We need perception, attention, or capability to solve problems, also simple problems, but problems that request to image, to build up a project to do a movement. In our laboratory, in the neurocognitive laboratory, the centrality of the patient is very important. The patient is the first actor of own rehabilitation. We have no more patients that execute passively a movement driven by the therapist, but our patient must understand the mental act, the mental process before doing a motoric act. So the neurocognitive exercise is based on the concept of thinking to do. Exercises are situations, not passive exercise, but situation where we try to extend the explorative and the cognitive capabilities of the patient toward particular assignment, keeping in the condition to increase the knowledge of our body, but also of the world around, of social condition or relationship and other situations that normally they find in their background, in their context, and where they have to produce an answer, produce a response to be able to live in that context. In these situations, the patient uses particular tools. These tools stimulate the research of solutions. They have problems, they have situations, and they have to find out solutions. We use virtual reality just to propose to our patients this context with simple situation where they have to interiorize the problem, the context, just to give a motoric response, a motoric answer. This is a picture or exactly our laboratory where we use some different tools, not only the virtual reality, but other tools to improve the knowledge, but to improve also the sensation, tactile sensation, for example, or proprioceptive sensation. Normally, we do not use shoes, we do not use stockings, because we want to stimulate the plants of the feet, just to conserve, to have all the information that come from the nerves of the periphery and stimulation that arrive to the central, to the brain, to the central nervous system. The exercise proposes to the patient problematic situation, conforming, of course, their competence, and they have to solve these problems using all the tools they have in the laboratory, but also their attention, their creativity, their cognitive experience. In this therapeutic situation, the patient is driven, of course, to detect the quality of the object and the collocation in the space through visual, tactile, acoustic information coming from the tools, coming from the virtual reality, coming from the interaction with other children, for example. Sometimes we realize this exercise in a group, not with only the patient alone. The cognitive learning must correspond to the enrichment of sensitive and motoric pattern with visible change of the action. Another characteristic of the neurocognitive exercise, the value of the speech in the organization, knowledge, and motoric strategies. With the patients with many different problems, not only motoric, also because many of these patients are in a complicated etiology of pathology. I mean, we have patients with Down syndrome, Rett syndrome, girls, you know, or disease, neurological disease like autism, Asperger's syndrome, epilepsy, very, very deep epilepsy like phenomena coming from delivery problems or genetical problems. So they have motoric problems, but in develop, in breaking, but also lack of abilities, hyperactivity, or hypoactivities, problems in the development of writing, of speaking, or problems in difficult social relationship. They are sometimes aggressive, or they have a regressive behavior. Very often we have a problem with the attention. These patients are not able to keep attention on or for a long time on a single situation. So when we work with these patients, we have to look not only the motoric aspect, but before the motoric aspect, the cognitive aspect. And the neurocognitive therapy offers to that children with the compromised development a stimulation just focused on their individual necessities. It's very important to analyze, the therapist analyze the single experience of the patient, of the children, just because the experience must increase with the faith of yourself and with the motivation of learning. So we have to build up a very personalized protocol for each single patient, coming from their background, their social condition, their family, their capability, and the stimulation they have in their context. The eyesight, hearing, tact, as well as perception of the body or the movement of the equilibrium cells are strictly jointed together and strictly jointed to the motoric development. And so they represent the whole of our therapy, together with the posture, together with the meaning, together with other aspects of the express of the feeling of the person. So the therapist propose many different activities, stimulant activities, oriented to each child, to the capability of each child, in which the child can exercise and increase his motoric act, his project, his cognitive aspect. The therapy offers a stimulation of the motoric and perceptive partner together. Children develop some new strategy and individual solution for their problems they lack. Another very important aspect that we underline with the virtual reality is the ocular-motor coordination. We know that many motoric acts that seems to be very simple has a difficult, a complicated, a complex project behind. Just to keep a glass of water, we have a long project of this movement, a complex function starting from the hindsight, just to see the object we want to catch, and we have to construct, we have to build up all the movement, all the project of the movement, to move the limb, to move our superior limb, just to arrive to the glass of water, to catch the glass of water, and to pick it up. So the dialogue between eyesight and movement is very important and very strictly. You know how different could be a movement with open eyes and with closed eyes. Not only movement, but also posture, also equilibrium are very joined to, strictly joined to the eyesight. So the visual tracking is the critical aspect in the rehabilitation project, and for helping children, helping patients, we use the virtual reality just to have this interaction also with the visual aspect. Why we decided to use NIRVANA virtual reality? Because there are many other products on the market, but we choose this one because it's the unique system without any tools. No glasses, no cables, no gloves, no joystick. People is free, and they can move themselves in a physiological context. So they can establish an interaction with the system totally free and really physiological. NIRVANA is a medical device based on a virtual reality designed to support the rehabilitation, the motor rehabilitation and the cognitive rehabilitation in different patients, not only children, of course, but also people with neurological disease. This system creates a virtual scenarios to allow the patient through an interaction only with his body, with his movement. The exercises are supported by visual stimulation, but also with acoustic stimulation, just to engage patients on perceptive and cognitive levels, with strong motivational support that in children are really important. And the goals achieved during the therapy allow the therapist to evaluate the results of the patient and to change the rehabilitation project, increasing or decreasing the difficulties, referring the capability of the patient, of the child. Patient must achieve elements that casual, for example, appears on the surface, and if the patient reaches the target element in time, there is a virtual change of the acoustic feedback, and the elements disappear. In this way, it's very engaged with all the body, with the eyes, with the tension, with the movement, with the superior limbs, but also with the back, the head, the inferior limbs, just to achieve, so with the global of his global activities to achieve the goals, the aim. With the virtual reality, we can calibrate the difficulties on the different activities chosen, referring the real capabilities and the potential of the patient. It is possible working, monitoring the activities and all the improvement of the patient. We cannot measure in this way, but we use some other tools just to measure the result, to measure the zero line and to measure the results we can achieve using this system, because the clinical observation could not be enough. Of course, with the tools we use are not permanent, because if we use a permanent, we change the physiological movement of the patient. So in our laboratory, we integrate the measure system only at the beginning to define the zero line and to verify in different periods the results that we achieve. We measure the muscle activities with a surface EMG just to know how much the patient used the muscles and if he used correctly, if the activity and disactivity of the muscles are correct. And we use a small inertial sensor just to have information about the movement and of the legs, of the feet, and the hips, just to know exactly the tilting of the hips, but only in different steps to measure the real increasing of the potential activities of our patients. In conclusion, we can say that the virtual reality system NIRVANA allows the patient to assess at activities that are very difficult or sometimes impossible to be achieved by a person with disability. We can try to manage the situation that the patient finds normally in daily context and that he is not able to solve. This is a sort of occupational therapy, a virtual occupational therapy with the particular cognitive stimulation. As I told you, we use it in the disability of the children, but it could be used very easy in other neurological patients. For example, in the post-stroke rehabilitation, in Parkinson's disease, or in our neurological disease, like neuropathy or spasticity, PCI, or paralysis after a traumatic event. To conclude, I should like to read this last picture, just because this is not my phrases, but the phrases of Dr. Maria Teresa Gatti, so it's not mine, but I think exactly the same concept. Just not to ruin what she told, I prefer to read you this conclusion. Rehabilitation as repetition of exercise, as muscle reinforce, as totally of standard gestures to memorize, of movements to execute, of rituals to celebrate, and stretching, massages, electricity, or the other elements which pervade the body with obscure influence. You hope that a sort of magic joins the broken cables and rebuilds the interrupted history between you and your feet, your hands, your face. But if you are not able to arrive into the thinking, to capture the will, to involve the dreams, every calculation is useless. And the music out of tone, without harmony. This is the teaching of Professor Perfetti, and I cannot think anymore that there is a separation between thought and movement, reality, representation, will, exercise, rehabilitation. This is the thinking to do. Thank you for your attention.